like how he sees, life compared to how we live. And it was very humbling for me to sit down and talk with him, because his faith is very strong. So he always bases his stuff off of that. And us, our family as well, we tend to base our stuff off of faith, and we're very close as a family. So my grandfather would definitely be a good vocalist in the discussion, I think, today.
Thank you. I think I think when you think about people who, or somebody that you'd look up to in terms of your culture, often we look at our parents, grandparents, because they were the people that we first learned about life from. So it makes sense. And I think that's something that a lot of us share in common.
Yeah.
We just have to hold on to that. So should we move on to the first question and then just start with Eleanor?
Yeah.
So the first question was, can you briefly share with us your experience in the UK as a Fijian or a Fijian Samoan, and whether you have managed to maintain your cultural identity and how?
Yeah, so I'll go first. So I came to the UK at the age of just going on to 8, and I've lived in London my whole life, basically, since I was 8. And because it's such a culturally diverse city, very cosmopolitan, I think that I met so many different cultures, basically. But still, with meeting so many different cultures, Fiji was still like, what? Where's that? Like, I don't know where that is. So I think a lot of being Fijian was just explaining where Fiji is and who I am and where it is on the map. And basically, it's the little dot near Australia. So I think with being Fijian in a country like this, there's a lot of like ethnic ambiguity, people trying to guess where you're from. Oh, are you this, going all around the world, but still never getting Fiji. So I think a lot of it was just explaining, where I'm from, but it was never a negative thing, because I'm so proud of where I'm from. I'm so proud of Fiji. So it was always I loved it. Yeah, ask me. Like, I want to tell you about Fiji. So I think that's basically the experience that I had growing up as a Fijian here, and. I never, because there were so many different cultures where I grew up, there was never any like racism. I didn't have to deal with any of that, because it's more like not spot the brown person, it was more like spot the white person, because it was so culturally diverse. So it's quite a positive experience, and I think I've tried to maintain like holding on to my culture through different ways. I think firstly, my cousins and I, we created this group called Kalomalangi, and I think that's helped us through dancing and performing different types of dances and mechas and things like that. We're able to find out more about our culture and also showcasing it. But we learn so much about it at Fiji and where we're from and our ancestors and things like that through our dance group. And it's helped us to just be proud of where we're from and showcase it more. And also just by going back to Fiji every now, like as much as we can, going back to Fiji, we try to stay in contact with our family, going back home to see what's happening. I think that's a way in which I've tried to, sort of like hold on to my culture. And also just through different projects at school and university, because I study linguistics. So I try to incorporate Pacific Islands into my projects. Like the Samoan language, I did something on that, and also the Ratuman language, because it's an endangered language. So just trying to incorporate it, Fiji and the Pacific, in different areas of my life has really helped me like stay in touch with my roots. Those are just different things that I can think of right now.
Mine is similar to Brittany's. But I moved here when I was 6 years old. We moved to Cornwall, and I've lived here the whole of my life. We've not moved anywhere else. And in Cornwall, there's literally not a lot of like brown skin colored people. It's just like, I swear, like 95% of the population is white. So like like you said, Brittany, like everyone would always ask, oh, where's Fiji? You know, we'd have to explain where it is. And then the most asked questions that I've had was, can you speak it? And like, I'm always proud to say, yeah, do you want me to teach you it? And then like they would find it so like amazing. Even I had a science teacher in secondary school where he was also my tutor, and he used to surf, and he would always like have Fijian lessons as well. So that kept me going as well, like maintaining my mother tongue. How I kept it, I still know how to speak Fijian now. That's because of my dad. He made a rule in the house where if we're in the house, we have to speak Fijian. If we're outside, we have to speak English. And then he extended the rule to, if you're in a Fijian function or Fijian event and you're around Fijians, you have to speak in Fijian. Sometimes he'll actually catch us speaking in English. So when we're in the car on our way home, he would like bring it up, and he'll be like, oh, I heard you guys speak in English. Like, just remember, continue to speak in Fijian, because I know it's hard, and you know, but like people will be proud of you guys for keeping your mother tongue.
Yeah.
Some people like lose it, and I'm starting to realize now, the 4 years that I've spent up in Leeds away from my parents, I started to lose a bit of my mother tongue kind of thing. And at home, when I come home, I kind of replace some of the Fijian words with English words. So I'm like, oh no, I'm starting to lose it. But then I always try to keep it going with my parents. Yeah, it's different for my sister as well, because she didn't know how to read in Fijian when she came. She was only like 3 or 4. But how she learned is she just read the Bible. Every time we have our family devotion, she would just read the Bible, and she didn't even know how to write in Fijian. So like, she knew how to read, she knew how to write as well. So she maintained it by doing that as well. I think the rule that my dad set helped us maintain our mother tongue.
That's like quite fortunate, because I've lived in England since I was 3 or 4 and traveled in between, but I've never been able to pick up the ability to speak it. I can say words here and there, and I can understand it and I can read it, but to think of what I want to say and to articulate it straight away.
Yeah.
So you're really, really lucky that you're there.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah, we used to hate it when we were younger, because we just wanted to speak in English. But when I came, I didn't know how to speak in English. Then when I joined in year 3, I remember the first week was awful, because I just couldn't understand anyone. I just had to nod and shake my head. And then I honestly don't know how I knew how to speak English. I think it's just being surrounded by British people, my friends, and then just caught it just like that.
Yeah, see, I was like that. When I first came to England, I was in year 2, year 3, and I only knew Fijian. Like, my dad would speak Fijian to me, and my dad was in the army, so he was quite, you know, on it as well with the Fijian. But as soon as I went to school, it was very difficult for me for the first couple of years, because like you, Tiko, I just couldn't understand the word, and it was just very difficult for me to learn. So I remember at one point I actually had a English tutor come in and take me aside and teach me, like, you know, basics of basic English. And for me that was helpful, because, you know, I get to you know, understand everything more. But like later on now, I've kind of realized like, or come to terms with like the fact that language and culture go hand in hand. You can't really get to know your culture if you don't know the language, or at least, you know, get to know a little of the language. Because there's one thing knowing your culture and then understanding it as well, you know, because to understand the culture means that you could also speak it as well, which is good. But like Sai was saying, I can understand it, I can say a few words here and there, but, you know, having a fluent conversation, it's hard for me, because growing up, I didn't have that influence that we had to speak Fijian, or like, keep the Fijian going in the family, because as soon as my sisters were brought into the situation, me being the eldest, I just carried on with school and didn't take any notice of the Fijian language. It was just kind of like something there in the background. But after being in Fiji and seeing the way that people integrate and the community there, it's a lot more laid back, and the Fijian kind of community anyway. But the way they communicate is something else compared to here. The kind of like the Talanoa we're doing now, but in another sense that it's done out of respect, and like it's the cultural way of it as well, which is good. But the Fijian language, I must say, is like one thing that I'm really trying to get to know, especially because with the Fijian language, you have obviously the different dialects.
Yeah.
And if you know the dialects, then you can instantly pick up where that person's from based off the dialect, which is what I love. You could literally say, Ombula, and then, Bulare, and then you say, oh, you're from Vanuatu or Mboa. And then that's like, oh, you have that connection instantly. You can, get to know the person much more easier because you have that, that connection instantly, which is great, I think.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, Piniasi, because your mum's Samoan?
Yeah.
Right? So how did your parents communicate, like, to each other, in what language?
So mum doesn't speak like full Samoan. She knows some, but she knows more Fijian than Samoan. But she grew up, like, I'm pretty sure she grew up knowing Samoan language and the culture as well, which is trying to influence on the girls now, like all the traditional dances and the way that they perform stuff. But I think the cultures are very similar, but which is great because we can kind of work both hand in hand with the two cultures. So
yeah. I think that's a really, really interesting point that you made, Peniasi, where you said that for you, knowing the language links to like being able to fully understand the culture.
Yeah.
Kind of go hand in hand. And Tickle, where you were saying that how strong how like stern your dad was with all of you when you came. It's almost like on the other side of that, there's Peniasi saying as he grew older and he just, Fijian just became something that you hear at home. Wasn't that kind of like there's like the you have to keep speaking Fijian, you have to speak Fijian. Like for me, it was also really similar. Like I can always understand it. I hear it every now and again, but it was never like, okay, we're only going to speak it and you have no other option. It's quite interesting because then as we speak like on behalf of our own experiences and this generation that we're from, so individuals who weren't born in the UK, but we moved to the UK at a really young age where we're like really impressionable. Because we didn't really have that, I think with Brittany and Peniasi and myself, we know it and we know our identity and our culture, but the language is something that we lost.
Yeah.
And in the whole topic of like an intergenerational dialogue, how do you think, like, are there things that you as individuals wish the older generations in your family, so like parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, are there things that you wish that they did differently to help you with your cultural identity today?
Yeah.
Or is it something that you're kind of like, okay, and then what can we do together to learn from it moving on from this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting question because with the whole language topic, I've asked my parents, why didn't you teach me Fijian? But then I've had to understand, like, from there where how they grew up and their point of view. So my father, he's half Fijian, half Samoan. And that's why I asked Penny that question, because my grandmother didn't know how to speak Fijian. And my grandfather didn't know how to speak Samoan. So the common language was English.
Yeah.
And so you've got, I asked my dad, so my dad knows how to speak Fijian, obviously, he grew up in Fiji and stuff, but in the home, they spoke English, you know? And then you've got my dad who married my mom, and then my mom, who's Kaloma, and she comes from, I asked her, did you guys speak Fijian at home? And she's like, no, mostly English. That's like, she said, the typical Kaloma house, mostly English. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then you've got like this, like I've had to understand that, and that's why we spoke English at home. But it is something that I'm like, oh, like I want to learn, like, and I hopefully one day will learn fluently. But yeah, I think that's something that I've asked my parents, why didn't you teach us Fijian? So yeah, you go like, that's, you know, it's so good that you learn, you know, the language, and it's something you can be thankful for to your father. But
yeah, the funny thing is though, I have 3 other younger siblings that were born here, and when they started growing up, before they went to school, they knew how to speak in Fijian. No, they literally know how to speak Fijian. And then when they started school, that's when they lost it. Like now, they understand it, but I think only Dan and Tepi, they can kind of speak it, and they can joke in Fijian and stuff like that. But Chloe, the youngest one, she cannot speak in Fijian at all. Like the accent and everything is just not there. I tried to teach her, but she just, every time I ask her like, do you want to learn how to speak Fijian? She's like, no, because I was born here. And I'm just like, oh, well, that's like a different generation that doesn't want to learn how to speak Fijian. But I don't know, maybe she's old. When she gets older, then she might want to know how to speak Fijian.
Yeah, see, I think the thing is, like you were saying, Pico, your siblings are younger, so they were kind of brought into that life straight away. The Fijian language was brought upon them, so it's much easier for them to just take it in, especially when they're young. But it's literally the same situation, like for me, when they were put into school, no one speak Fijian, obviously. So English is one thing they had to learn. And then as you slowly progress through the English language, you kind of, the Fijian just gets pushed back. And then it's not until you get to like a later age where you realize how important that language could be. Like now, I'm really wishing that I did grow up learning Fijian, just so, you know, it's kind of like, I don't know, a blessing as well. So like I can speak, I know my language, I know where I'm from, you know, and I can speak it and tell people where I'm from, not only in English, but and also in Fijian. And like you were saying, you know, how your friends could ask you, oh, can you speak Fijian? I would say yes, but then I only tell them like, you know, the generic hello, goodbye, thank you, and just things like that.
Basics,
Yeah, exactly. Basics. So it's not something that I'm not ashamed of, but something that I would love to get to know more, the language. It's a big thing, I think. Very big.
One thing I wish my dad continued was, we used to have like a culture night every, like once a week after family devotion. We'd have it like on one of the nights, weeknights, and he would literally teach us how to, there was one time where he said, you know, when you have your cell and then, you know, all the Maramas have to get the tea and you put it in front of the Turangas. And then he showed us how we had to do it. And me and Thiele, we just looked at each other and we were like, who does that? So like he showed us, and the way he showed us was just very like Fijian cultural kind of thing. Put the tea down and, you know, you say, you know, the tea's ready, and then you do the ombo thing. And honestly, I felt so weird, but Dad was like, but if you do it, like the other Fijians will watch you do it and they'll want to do what you're doing. And we only did it for like a couple of weeks, and then I don't know how we stopped. I think we just didn't like it and we just stopped. But I wish we continued it because it was really good to like learn about the culture. And We even learned how to do the chilo properly. You know,
Yeah.
it was like saying, you know, if you have to ask them before you go past them, kind of thing, and like don't go in front of them unless they give you permission to go in front of them. And there's just little things like that we've learned, but I wish he taught us more, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now,
That's like my dad, he was telling me before I went to Fiji, all the customs in the village is a lot different to how we live here. So it was like dad was saying on the culture night, you know, he was explaining all those things. And then one thing I got to notice is that the elders of the village, when they see you trying to do that and, you know, go by those ways, they really appreciate it, because then they look at you and think, oh, you know your culture, you know how to, you know, get to integrate with the community, and like, you know, the culture very well to the extent where you can use it in your daily life. That's another thing as well. I think as like children growing up, being taught the Fijian way has been very useful for us, because obviously being Christian as well, my dad has always told me to respect my elders and, you know, treat them with, you know, honor and respect. And I've always lived by that. And when I get to meet someone new, I never think less or more of them. I just kind of think like we're the same person, you know, you get to know the person and don't ever think you're more higher than that person. You know, you're on the same level, and, you know, try and humble yourself, which is a good, because I think the Fijian culture, we're very we're very integrated as like people, like we're very close with each other. So when it comes to things like that, it's like the more people you know, the easier, you know, you get to know people, because it just spreads like wildfire, which is can be a bad thing sometimes, but good at the same time as well.
I think it's interesting because with all of your reflections, you've kind of highlighted how relationships played a key aspect. But also the action, doing it in motion. So for Brittany, your physical trips back to Fiji, being able to do that for you helped to really sustain your links with Fiji, and like your identity within yourself, and Tico yourself too, with like the way that you said that you had cultural nights with your parents and your family, like act those things out where you stop the whole movement when we moved with our families to a completely different country. In Penyasi, when you went back to Fiji and you learned through action. And it's quite interesting, because then part of this whole conversation and the reason we're having this dialogue is to find out how different generations have learned and how they've maintained it. So it's a matter of physically going, for those who cannot physically travel back, because it's also not cheap. World from Fiji, like actively making that effort to do so. And it's quite hard. Each of us, now that we're older, we've kind of realized that you wish that things were different when we were younger. And I guess what we can really draw from these kind of talanoas is, as we talk more with each other, then we realize, oh, we could have done this differently. Oh, I wish this could have happened. And if we try and have more of these conversations with our parents, with our grandparents, if they're still around, then they can really help us to learn how to better teach the generations that come up. Because obviously from now, as we move on to the next phases of life, we'll be, we'll have nieces and nephews and children, and, you know, God willing, and grandchildren. And one day they'll be sat there having these type of conversations. And part of our identity will be like what Brittany says. So they'll be saying, well, my grandparents moved to England when they were really young. And then that's not always saying that you will marry another Itauke Fijian, or you'll marry another Samoan. you can marry outside of the culture, and even then, it's just like, how do we start the dialogue so that we can continue it with generations to come? Yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you guys? I'm just really just talking and thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, because I know a few like friends who are Fijian, who have parents are very like they love to stick to the cultural way. So when it comes to I know some of my mates joke around about it, but like when it comes to like girlfriends or like relationships, the mum especially is always asking, oh, is she Christian? Can she cook and everything? Is she Fijian and everything like that? And I laugh, but you have to kind of see it from where they come from, like the cultural side of it. Because if we because say if I was to bring a English girl home and then she's heard nothing about Fiji, and then she sees the way we live, it kind of can be a cultural shock for that person. And you can kind of see where the parents are coming from. But like I also think it's to do with like identity as well. You as like your name and who you are. But bringing someone to like that kind of standpoint where you're bringing someone to that name or culture, you have to kind of introduce them to the culture beforehand, just so they already warmed up and know what to expect. Not that it's a bad thing to not let them know, oh, instead of eating with knives and fork, we eat it with our hands. Like, it's just the way we eat it. That's just how, like, for example. But that's just like little things like that can really open the eyes for someone coming to the Fijian culture.
And I think it's also important for us because it's a way that we honor our identity.
Yeah.
Honor our parents and our grandparents and our ancestors by doing so. And I feel like that what you said, Phineas, when you went back to Fiji and your dad taught you and showed you things to do, and you noticed how the elders in the village, even though they knew that you came from the UK and you've been living here for a long time, they appreciated the fact that you made an effort to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite important. I always feel like in the beginning, I used to always worry about, oh, I'll do it wrong. Oh, I won't say it the right way. We try. I don't really know it very well. So what if I call them tau when they're not really my tau? And what we should move past, especially now, is being afraid, because that's the only way that you'll make a mistake. But as long as you have people who will support you, that will correct you, then you're okay, sorry, I wasn't meant to do it that way. I think, well, that's how I perceive the older generations to be. I'd assume that they'd rather that you make an effort and try.
Exactly, yeah. Like, I keep on referring back to when I was in Fiji, but on the team I was a project with, I was doing Fijian as well as with one of the leaders. But of course, when the leader was busy, everyone would come to me and ask, what's happening here? Why is he doing this? And obviously having a bit of background from dad and granddad, I can kind of elaborate on it. And, it was great to just talk about the culture and explain why we're doing it. Because as you said, it's part of our identity and who we are. And one thing about the Fijian culture, it's very selfless. So, for example, we prioritize other people's health more, essentially. So, like, we can welcome you into our homes and give you food that we've never had before. But that's because that's something we do as Fijians, because we want to make sure that your stay is the best stay you've had in a long time. Like, for example, when I was in the village, every morning I'd walk to the community hall or the village hall and get away from some of the houses and say, oh, Yandra, munchi mai. I was like, oh, this is very different from all the... Here in England, it's very different. Like, if I was to stand outside my road now and welcome someone into our house, and look at me in a weird way, like, what are you doing? Like, you know, it's different because in Fiji, it's literally it. Because like in Fiji, that's what we stand for. Essentially, we love the community, we love our people, and love who we are. So we try to make sure that everything is based around that, and obviously faith as well. Faith is very strong in Fiji. So, you know, they do it in the eyes of the culture and religion, essentially.
Yeah, I had sort of like the same experience coming here when I was like 7, going on to 8, and I was walking down the street, and I just remember thinking, it's so grey. Like, why is it always so dark? Like morning. I was walking down the street, and I was like, oh, I was just like smiling at people and saying good morning, and they would look at me like, you know, strange. So yeah, it's definitely that the two cultures that we're trying to
accommodate for.
It's definitely
It's like you say hello in Fiji or good morning in Fiji, you're seen as a local. Say hey, you're seen as a crazy person. Like, what am I doing wrong, honestly?
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that I experienced is when I see like one of my dad's friends or something, and then they say, oh Leo, where's mom? And then when I respond in Fijian, they get a shock that I know how to speak Fijian. And I'm like, but I am Fijian, so I can, you know, like, I just don't know how they get shocked. But I feel like it's the norm to them that I feel like to them it's like most Fijians speak in English automatically kind of thing. And there's just a few that respond in Fijian. But I feel like one thing that, you know, the older generation can kind of, I don't know, change or adapt to is like not making that a norm kind of thing. Because there are some Fijians that don't know how to speak Fijian. Like, if they respond in English, then they'll be like, okay, she doesn't know how to speak Fijian, then I'll respond in English again.
Exactly, like it's like when we meet up with our community members and they try to sometimes say something Fijian to me, I'll like sit there for a few minutes thinking what they're saying, and then before I know it, they talk to me back in English, and then by the time they talk back to me in English, I try to get the Fijian response out of me, but I just give up. So just respond back in English. But it's like how you said, you know, how people get shocked. Like, yes, I know I'm Fijian, and then me responding or trying to respond in Fijian, it can be a shock because like, oh, you grew up in England, you know how to speak English. So then, boom, you get the Fijian response, and it's like, whoa, you can speak Fijian. But the thing is with the language, it's a lot different to other languages. Like nothing like English or it's quite a fast language, so learning it would be very difficult as well. Hence why, like it can get complex as well. My dad was telling me, like, you know, just certain sentences you have to like rephrase them or something, but it still means the kind of thing. But it's confusing, but definitely worth learning it. I think I really want to get to terms with it.
Now I'm thinking of like, because I'm at home, I was thinking, okay, I know how to speak Fijian, what else can I do? And then I'm like, I don't know both of my dialects, so I might just ask my dad to teach me the Naithasiri dialect, and then my mum or my granddad the Lawan dialect. So that's one of my main goals.
Talking a lot about the language. I have a question. I'll ask the question just to kind of gauge where we're at. Has the new identity that you've created or that you've grown into as being a Fijian who was brought up in the UK ever caused you to feel less Fijian than you are? So,
can you ask that again, please?
Because we've grown up in the UK and we speak with an English accent.
Yeah.
you felt less Fijian or that you're not Fijian enough? So I'll answer, I have, in the sense that because I can't necessarily speak the language, it makes me feel that way. But also I'm at a point where I'm thinking, if I'm actively trying to learn, why do I still feel that way?
Mm.
And Brittany, I'm quite eager to hear your response, because you also mentioned that your mom is Kailoma, and you know, like, we don't, I feel that sometimes we don't honor the relationship that Kailoma people have, and but you are Fijian, you are Itaukei, you know,
Yeah.
that way. So have you ever felt that way?
Yeah, I think there can be the tendency to feel that way because because, you know, if a language is important to a culture, it is. But I've also come to realize by speaking to my parents that just because I don't know the Fijian language does not make me not Fijian. It's not interrelated, you know? So just because I can't speak the language, it doesn't make me less Fijian, although sometimes I do feel less Fijian. So it's just coming to that understanding. But I'm sort of in the same boat as you, Sai. So like, you know, I am trying to learn, and I do try my best to understand things and things like that, and ask my parents about the, like, you know, this and this tradition and this relationship with this person, you know, like all those things that come with being a Fijian. I am actively trying to learn. So I think that it's quite a big topic, and something that I've spoken to my parents about a lot. But yeah, I don't think that just because you don't speak Fijian, it doesn't make you less Fijian, but it can make you feel less Fijian. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I feel Fijian. But yeah, I don't know. I even try and help my sister, my little siblings speak in Fijian as well. Or sometimes if I tell them something in Fijian and they respond to it because they understand it, I'll still ask them, did you know what I said? And then when they say, yeah, I'll be like, hey, what did I say? And then when they say it, I'm like, okay, you still understand it. But we also try to help other Fijians in the community, like that are in our kind of age group, speak in Fijian as well. So we play a game where you can't speak in English. And if you do, then you'll get like a slap or something. I don't know. But they used to hate it. It's funny though, because it does help them. Like our aunties will say, that's a really good game. Like, you need to keep doing it because then it will help them as well catch up with the language. I really do think language does play a part, but I don't think you need it to make you feel more Fijian or less Fijian.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree with Tico and Brittany. Like, the sense that not knowing the language kind of does make me feel like I'm less Fijian than I am. But it's also like my heritage and like my bloodline, not essentially like because it is who I am, but like say on the Samoan side, there's a lot more to it as well. And from my dad's side, there's a lot more Fijian there.
Yeah.
So it's, in a sense, I do wish that I got to know like my family heritage more. That way I get to come to terms with the roots more and know who I am. But feeling Fijian, I think in a sense of language, yes, it's definitely something that's hindering me. Like, I do want to learn language, of course, as I said, and it is making me feel less Fijian. But again, it's the way like we surround ourselves with our community. Like, for example, us, like when I'm out with my siblings in, say, church or town, and then after when we're socializing, we're all laughing and joking, and it's that sense of humor that, you know, other British people may not understand, and they're like, "Oh, you seem like such happy people," and everything, which we are. But then little do they know, you know, we're kind of ripping into each other and the stack actually kind of thing. And the thing with, you know, that obviously they have banter, but the Fijian way, the Vakachi and the joking, we all do it out of respect, which is what, you know, this is what I love really. So like hang out with my cousins, that's what we pretty much do every time. But as I said, it's done out of respect, and you know, at the end of the day, it's a joke. A joke is a joke. You know, we still get along with each other, and we still treat each other like family. You know, and it's good to see that my parents and our family has really tried to surround us in like a Fijian community. Hence why, you know, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but they've got aunties downstairs, and it's quite noisy if you guys couldn't hear already. So, but yeah.
I also like the fact that, you know, how we have different matinitus, like, you know, Tawata,
Yeah.
and how like say like for Naitasiri people from Ra will be our mata, and you know, everyone from Laos, you know, we can joke about silly jokes with them, people from Nabono level. And then there's some people from different villages where we have to kind of respect and like with our aunties and uncles, how they, you know, that's their mata, like, oh, mata, they're so cool. Someone that they can joke about, they're so loud.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of sense of respect kind of thing. And I remember my dad always reminds us, he's like, just be careful who you speak to. You need to know where they're from first, because you don't know where they could be. They could be your Matangali or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, oh, in England, we don't do that. Just speak to anyone.
Sorry, but it's not England. That's true. Like, because the leader I was with was from Kandavu, and I think one of the other project leaders was their Tau, and then all the British guys and the non-Fijians, they were saying like, you know, how come they are doing that right in front of us? You know, they're being quite childish and everything. And I said, that's the culture we have. You know, all of that. When it's all said, and at the end of the day, it's how it is. You know, it's all to do like back in the like, you know, the colloquial days of like tribal warfare and everything. Now it's all, you know, out of respect and everything. But like the Tovata and everything, it's really, you know, it's really interesting because like, you know, I got to meet one of my uncles per se. Found out that he is obviously Tovata with my dad, sorry. And the way they get along compared to dad's Tao, you can really see like the differences between them. But but it's still good though, because like you can have that banter, you can have that joke, and have that fun with them without causing a fight.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
It's well, we've got 7 minutes left till 9 o'clock, guys.
That was gone well quick.
We talk for an hour. But I don't know. I can start wrapping up now, or let me start by reflecting on what we've spoken about.
Yeah.
If you feel that you want to add anything else, then we can do that. But I think from our Talanoa this evening, we've really all shared how experiences differ, for sure.
Yeah.
But even though they differ, we're all still very similar.
Yeah.
One thing that maintains is the fact that we're all Fijian.
Yeah.
Regardless of how much we know of our language, how much we know about our humor, how in depth we know the cultural and social roles, there is a part of us that is still and will always will be Fijian, because that is our identity. And I think in terms of cultural resilience, too often when you come from one culture and you grow up in another culture, people assume that you need to completely adapt one and dismiss the other. But this conversation that we've had this evening has really shared how in the lives of like the three of you and myself, because we don't want to speak for everybody, but in our own personal experiences, it just really reflects we are able to hold on and work with both.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To move in between different identities and cultures is a strength. And what we're really doing is just encouraging each other with how much we do know and then helping each other to build on it more.
Yeah.
Rather than always saying,
yeah,
oh, but I don't speak it enough. I can only understand certain words. You can understand certain words, and that is a good thing. Speak
yeah,
that is a good thing. You do know your position when you enter your village, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And that's like what I believe that we should just like keep when we keep having these conversations, you know, even as we have them with our parents and with our grandparents and those in our community. Sometimes it could be because we're the younger ones that they often say, oh, but you don't know that much. And it's like, okay, well, I know this much, but if it's wrong, can you tell me what's the right way?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if it's not fully the whole, like, if I don't understand it fully, can you teach me more?
Yeah.
And I think with all of your reflections this evening, that's what you've shared, that there is no, and you're strong in your identity, but there's also still so much more that we can learn from the other generations.
yeah,
In that way, our culture can remain resilient whilst we live away from home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
yeah. Because I don't know about like you guys, but for me, culture is a huge thing in my life. Like my identity and who I am. You know, the Fijian side of me is like one thing that I want to, you know, really bring out and put on show because it is who I am and I'm proud to be Fijian.
Yeah.
And, you know, like things like Matangali and knowing your role in the village, where you're from, and like where you stand as a Fijian and the community you're from is really big, because then you can really come to terms with other youth as well and say, oh, I know where I'm from. And then if they don't know, they'll be like, oh, you know, it's a really like good thing to have in your back pocket to say, you know, I know where I'm from. I know this part of my village. I know the Matangali. I know the chief, the elders as well. And I think as the younger generation, we can really learn a lot, as Sai said, especially from the elders, because the elders being alive for way like longer than us, they have a lot more knowledge and background and experience on topics like this, because we all start like somewhere, and it's just that help we need to get to where we want to be in terms of our culture and the understanding of it. And with the elders as well, you can really rely on them for advice, general advice as well, in typical situations like daily lifestyle things you may have going on or family issues. You can always rely on them as kind of like backup or help in your situation or in your life. It can be a really big influence, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, I just like to say that I think this kind of platform that you've used, Sai and Marama Alliance, it's a really good platform to use for this kind of discourse. And I think that it's sort of been coming up recently, more of these Zoom sessions, young people trying to understand more about each other, young Fijian people. So yeah, I think it's just a great way to move forward and to get to know each other more and to get to know different experiences, but also to come to this level-headed, understand other people, and not just like, you know, sort of like just, you know, with one, this is my, you know, this is how
it's meant to be.
Yeah, understanding other people and coming from different experiences. So I think it's a great platform to use, and yeah, I think it's great. what we've
Yeah,
done.
I agree with Brittany. I'm looking forward to the other ones because I
Yeah.
want to see their views as well. It would be
Yeah.
interesting to learn from them as well.
Definitely.
Really.
I remember my dad would always say, like, because we're in a foreign country, we have to stick together as Fijians. We're all one. You know, we need to help each other out. And then sometimes when I go to him for advice, he'll always start with, "Kanda na kay Fiji kanda," and then go on, and I would be like, "Oh, here we go again." Literally. Or if I try and compare the British culture, I don't know, something
Yeah.
with the Fijian culture, he'll just be like, "No, but I think we need to keep our culture," and you know, they'll see it from our, and they'll understand us because we're trying to keep our culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much, guys.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we sign off tonight, I'd just like to say a big Vanakavaka level from myself, from Marama Alliance. And I know that, like Brittany said, like we just hope that this will be the beginning of a number of conversations that we can have along the way. And we're just here to help facilitate and provide the space. But really, it's just about allowing individuals to come and share their experiences. And I believe that what you've all shared, thank you for blessing us with, you know, parts of you that you didn't have to share. And we respect you for that. And where the next two sessions will be on 2 different age groups. So the next session next week on Tuesday the 15th will be the 30 to 49-year-olds. And then the week after, on Tuesday the 22nd of September, we'll have the 50 plus. So we're really trying to hope that throughout these different sessions that we can kind of capture just an idea of what's going on in the minds of Fijians at different ages whilst they live in the UK. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight, and blessings and love, and may you be safe for the rest of this evening. And thank you also to everybody else who was watching, and for those of you who are just coming on at the end, the session's recorded, so we'll be posting it up on our YouTube later. Vinaka.